Welcome back everybody to another MOTOBOB video from Motorcycle Live, our favourite show in the UK, and we're here at the Triumph stand for a look at some of their new bikes for 2025. So here we go with everything that you need to know about the lineup ahead of the new model year. Now in the Roadster lineup, the entry point is the Trident 660. You've got the Street Triple R above that, the Street Triple RS, and then the Speed Triples as the top dogs. But this is actually the one that gets the biggest update for 2025. In fact, it's a fairly significant update in some ways, and I think it really does offer now exceptional value for money. It is, however, the same 660 triple engine that makes around 80 horsepower. It's got that nice triple sounding character to it. I believe the chassis as well is very much the same tubular steel frame, Nissin brakes up front, but they have made a little bit of a tweak to the suspension, which they say offers a touch more comfort. And I do know from having owned one of these and speaking to fellow owners that some people did find it a little bit firm, so that could be welcome news for some potential owners. More significantly than that though, I do think the new sport riding mode, which is carried over from the Daytona 660, is really going to appeal to more experienced riders, because previously you just had the rain and road, and both of them were relatively docile and I would say fairly beginner friendly. On top of that though, you now get an inertial measurement unit, so both traction control and ABS are now cornering sensitive, and they've added single button cruise control, which again I think is another feature that a lot of people have been asking for. It's not particularly complex, you can't nudge it up and down, there's no resume button or anything like that, but you know, if you hold your speed with the throttle and hit cruise control to lock it in, then that's going to take some of the sting out of those longer motorway stints. As if a new riding mode though, a new IMU, and the addition of cruise control wasn't enough already, they've also decided to fit some of the accessories as standard. So one is their up and down quick shifter, the Triumph Shift Assist system, and this was actually an accessory I had fitted to my own bike, and I thought it was really very good and suited the sort of slightly sporty nature of this bike very nicely indeed. That on its own I think was at least a couple of £100, and then you also now get their Bluetooth connectivity module, again fitted as standard, another £200 or £300 accessory, and that opens up calls, media, turn-by-turn nav through the switchgear and dash. And so if you like your tech, another big boost I think for this 2025 model. Visually, well, most of the shapes are the same, but you do have some pop-in new paint jobs. They've gone for a different graphical treatment, and this one's available in this yellow behind me, but also a red version and a blue version, so perhaps a little more vibrant than the previous color choices, along with still a standard black, which is the most affordable option. But yeah, I think the most impressive thing is the fact that they've managed to keep the price the same. That base model starts still at £7,895, and so I reckon that's a heck of a lot of new features, plus the standard equipment bundled in, and all without the price budging. Now moving over to the Adventure family, we've got a lot of the same upgrades that have also been applied to the Tiger Sport 660, which of course, given the 660 name, shares the same platform and the same engine. So you've got the sport mode, the IMU, the cruise control, all added to that bike as well. And I will say some of the features potentially on a sports tourer like cruise control could be even more valuable in that context. But I think one of the most exciting announcements for Triumph for the 2025 model year has to be this, the new 800 version of the Tiger Sport. This one, of course, gets a slightly larger triple-cylinder engine, and it makes a good 30-ish more horsepower, so I think it's up at 110, but also some interesting upgrades across the rest of the bike. Now, naturally, with it being slightly larger, it's got the bigger bodywork, so could be more comfortable with a bit more wind protection. But then on top of that, you've got more adjustability in the suspension and upgraded 4-piston radially mounted brakes up front. I'd also say I really do prefer the look of the side-slung exhaust as opposed to the underbelly one on the 660 bikes, and at just under 11 grand, when you consider the 660 is around the 9 grand mark, for what you're getting, it does look like quite good value for money, and it should offer a bit more fun if you're riding sportily, but then also that extra grunt could be valuable if you're touring 2-up with luggage. Now before we get onto the next bike, I just want to say a massive thanks to today's video sponsor, and that's Caloto. Now Caloto is a brilliant navigation app that's specific to motorcyclists, and it uses their own dedicated in-house algorithm to plot the best route so you never have to ride a boring road again. Not only is it a great tool for plotting tours and routes when you're going on longer trips, but I also love the ability to set a distance, set a general direction, choose between super twisty or flowing curves, and that way I can find new routes and new combinations in the local area to mix up my regular rides. we absolutely love using Caloto here at MOTOBOB, so I'd fully recommend checking out the links down in the description below, and you'll also find down there a couple of codes, one for a free trial and the other for a discount if you do decide to take out one of their premium memberships. So once again, a massive thanks to Caloto for their support and making videos like this possible. Now, some of you are probably well aware that Triumph have recently decided to dip their toe into the MX market, and that's exactly what we've got here, their new 450. And I've got to say, it really does look quite smart in the new Triumph Racing paint job. But really, I've got absolutely no idea about motocross bikes, and they all look roughly the same to me. So I think with that in mind, we probably should move swiftly on. Now over to the modern classics or the retros, and the biggest revisions in this part of the Triumph lineup have to be to the Speed Twins. Behind me we've got the 900 version that used to be known as the Street Twin, another Triumph that I used to own, and I'm very fond of this bike. But I will say it has undergone a bit of a transformation that's made it feel a little more modern, and you can kind of see that in the looks. They've shortened up the mudguards, they've squared off the tank a bit, they've revised some of the details and some of the finishing parts, but I think the overall effect is pretty good, and what it does do is differentiates it a little bit more from the more traditional looking bikes in the lineup like the T100. Thing is though, it's not just style over substance, there are some significant tweaks here. It's now got an upside down fork, a new radially mounted 4-piston brake up front as well, and they've also introduced, like some of the other bikes, an inertial measurement unit that now means you get lean sensitive ABS and lean sensitive traction control. One thing I didn't love about the previous gen was the fact that the seat height was just so low. I know it makes it appealing to some riders perhaps, but they have lifted it a little for this model, which I think is going to give a more palatable riding position for more riders. But if you do want the lowest possible seat height and the ability to flat foot it, then they've now added a low seat to the accessories catalogue, which takes another 20mm off. So it kind of feels like with that change they have managed to broaden the appeal still further. Tech-wise, in the cockpit, you've now got their hybrid dash, which is sort of carried over from the 660, so it's got an inverted LCD at the top, a little TFT at the bottom, and that means if you want to fit the Bluetooth connectivity module, which is still an accessory on this model, you can get phone calls, media, and navigation right there on the dash. So that rounds off, like I say, a fairly comprehensive modernization of the Speed Twin 900. Also being updated for 2025 though, we have got the 1200 variant of the Speed Twin, and I've got to say this one does really look quite tasty. Now naturally they've retained the base model but also added in this new RS version that you can see behind me, and both of them I think get a little bit of a bump in peak power. I think they went from 100 horses up to 105. On top of that, they've got a new styling package, much like the 900, it just looks a little bit more modern. And also that new dash in the cockpit, which I don't think it was that controversial for the 900 because that already had a single clock. But previously, these ones had twin analog clocks, and I think, judging from the comments on our videos, it was not a particularly popular move, but you've got to admit it does open up quite a bit more functionality. As for the chassis, well, the base bike gets upgraded Marzocchi piggyback shocks, although they have slightly downgraded the brakes. They used to be Brembos and now they're Triumph branded, but still 4-piston, radially mounted, should be good performers. But really, it's this one, the RS, if you want the sort of ultimate Bonneville in terms of performance. This one gets slightly more aggressive ergonomics. It's got an up and down quick shifter, which isn't possible on the other bike because of the foot peg position, and then Öhlins piggyback shocks at the rear for the ultimate in ride quality, and this one does get the Brembo Stylema brake calipers. I think it looks pretty phenomenal, but you've got to say at 14.5 grand-ish it is a lot of money, but for me this one is a little bit of a dream bike in a sort of achievable way, and I'm very much looking forward to taking one of these out for a spin when we get hold of one for review. Now, as for the rest of the Bonneville lineup, well, I think it largely stays the same. You've got all the same bikes, the Scrambler 900, the 1200s as well, the T100, the T120, the Bobber, the Speedmaster. But there is a new finish available, which is the Icon Edition, which takes one of their heritage logos and plasters it on the tank, along with a bit of extra detail. Now, this follows on from other limited runs they've done in terms of finishes, like the Gold Line, the Chrome, and the Stealth Edition last year. And so, yeah, it's not like limited in number, but just time bound, so you'll only be able to buy this finish for the 2025 model year. Personally, I really like it, and I think it most suits the most traditional bikes like the T100 and T120, and for the extra few £100 could just add that little extra special pop if you want a body that looks a little bit different. I should also mention in the modern classic lineup we've got the 400s, so the Speed 400 here, the Scrambler 400X, and I believe these have both been good sellers since they were launched last year, and rightly so, both fantastic bikes, and I particularly like the more road-focused handling on this Speed 400. Thing is though, we are expecting more models on this 400 platform, and one that's been spied out testing is a baby Thruxton, and although there's no word on that yet, the one that I saw in the spy shots did look pretty close to production, and so hopefully we'll see more 400 Triumphs in the not too distant future. But from something quite small to something rather large, we're over at the Rocket 3, and this is always a popular bike on the Triumph stand because it just looks so impressive. As a reminder, this is the largest capacity production bike you can buy at 2.5 litres with its triple cylinder engine, and it also makes more torque than any other production motorcycle too. 180 horsepower peak now as well, so plenty of power on tap, and it handles far better than a bike of this size has any right to do, owing partly to the fact that it's got excellent componentry with fully adjustable show suspension and top spec Brembo brakes. New for 2025 though, we've got this, the Evel Knievel edition, with logos dotted all over the bike to celebrate the fact that Evel Knievel from time to time used Triumph bikes to complete some of his extremely daring stunts. So there's logos on the mudguard, on the seat, on the side panels, but it's the tank that really stands out with a chrome base layer painted over with white and then some stars and stripes details that obviously reference his famous jumpsuit. So perhaps one for the collectors, and the R model starts at £25,495, whereas the slightly more relaxed GT version comes in at 26,195, and so that's just over £2 more than the standard versions of each. So that rounds off some of my favourite Triumph models for the new 2025 model year, and I'd love to know which your pick is down in the comments below. Also, do check out our playlist, which is on the screen now if you want to see all of our content from Motorcycle Live, and I'd fully recommend hitting subscribe if you haven't already to see each of those videos as soon as they go live. And massive thanks for watching this one, and hopefully we'll see you in the next video.